Some cars, for whatever reason, happen to become insanely popular with a huge cross-section of people, young and old, male and female, from dedicated petrolheads to fairly average commuters. Cars like the new Mini Cooper and the Ford Fiesta ST are almost universally loved. But one car that I've never quite understood being bought by petrolheads is the Abarth 595. It's essentially a hotted up Fiat 500, and not only do people go nuts for these things, but the owners are really passionate and keen to customise and tune their cars to a level that I rarely see outside of JDM circles in this country. But at over £20,000 for some of the hotter versions, does this city car with bells on really deserve the adoration that it gets? Well, my friend Aaron from AJP Car Care kindly loaned me his 595 for an afternoon so I could find out for myself.
Inside the Abarth, things do not get off to a brilliant start. Everything in here feels like it's been designed to sort of try and be fun, and I gotta tell you, Fiat/Abarth, just putting a massive slab of coloured plastic on your dash doesn't make it feel any nicer. The switchgear and instrumentation in here feels like it's been lifted from a van. In fact, I'd say it suffers from many of the same problems that the Mini often does. It spends so much time trying to be desperately retro and cool, it forgets to be good. Now, this is a reasonably cheap car. It's certainly the sort of car that most people have on their radar as a first performance or fun car. Now, they come in a few different variants. This is the straight 595 or 595 Custom, as I'm told it's called. Now, it's not a Trofeo, it's not a Turismo, it's not a Competizione, none of that stuff. Now, in terms of modifications, the only one of real significance here is a Blue Spark tuning box, and that means that it has adjustable power levels. This one is currently running around the 160 horsepower mark. Now, as you can see, we're still suffering from the snowstorm, although the temperature has risen dramatically since the weekend. Now, I'll be completely honest here, I'm really not the biggest fan of the new Mini either. I really don't get it. I think it's a very expensive car for what is not a lot of car, and if you're happy to go with something lightly used, you can get a BMW of much greater quality for the same price. And I think this is a sort of similar thing. It looks cool and it sounds cool, but I've just never really been that convinced by it. So I'm very grateful to Aaron for lending me his 595 for today for me to find out once and for all whether it's any good. I'm still not really a Mini person, but having driven a couple now, they are an awful lot of fun to drive, and I'm hoping this can replicate some of that. Perhaps the most striking difference between this and a Mini to start off with is the driving position. You feel so high up in this. I know it's something that people mention whenever they review one of these, but dear Lord, it doesn't help. I love being as low in my car as I possibly can, and this isn't great. Now, the engine's a 1.4 four-cylinder turbo connected to a 5-speed manual box. That's one of my first points of criticism. A 5-speed box in 2018? Come on, Abarth, you can do better than that. I know that you can. My Alpha 147 is from 2008, and that came with a 6-speed box. And given the nature of this engine, I really think it should be better. Heel and towing doesn't come naturally in this. Steering weight is very curious. It's very heavy, quite similar actually to the Mini, and I don't think it should be that heavy. This is a really light car. The boost threshold is quite high. Now, the car is not geared too hideously. At 70 mile an hour you're doing just under 3,000 RPM, but still, I would like to have a 6th gear. I don't know, it just seems better. It seems racier somehow, I suppose. There's plenty of noise inside the cabin. This car also has a blow-off valve, which makes its presence known occasionally. The interior is just a bit, I really don't get why there's a couple of very, very prominent 500 badges in it. It's a 595. Come on, Abarth, for the premium you're charging people, at least get the damn badge right. Every time I try and put the handbrake on, I also nearly adjust my seat, because right next to the handbrake lever is the seat height adjustment lever. Who put that there? What's wrong with having it down here? Oh, I suppose the fact there's not really a lot of room. Now, when it comes to driving in a sporty and engaging manner, this driving position really does not help. I don't feel like I've got as much confidence in the car as I would like. Yeah, I tried to heel and toe it. I'm getting a little bit... Boy, that back end moves a lot. It's allegedly 10 degrees out there, so we shouldn't really be having traction issues today, but back end's squirming a bit. Also, who put this gauge here? Who put this gauge here? The last time I saw a gauge so badly and just nastily placed in a standard interior was in the Plymouth Prowler. Anyone remember that? That's the car that looks like it fell out of the 1990s video game Mega Race. There's a reference for you. I mean, what's it doing there? Why is it... I mean, I don't even care that much. I'm not looking at it. You know, when I've got my foot down, I'm looking up there, not down here. And it just looks a bit nasty tacky. Now, it's also got a massive bit in the middle of it to tell me whether sport mode is engaged or not. Sport mode, as far as I can tell, basically is a sprint booster. Disengaging sport mode does also lighten up the steering somewhat, but it certainly doesn't give it any more feel. Boost threshold feels to be about 3.5. But there's a reasonable amount of lag. Let me just see how bad it is. Okay, let's get it at 3,500 RPM in third. Foot down. Oh, there we go. Oh, lots of lag. Lots and lots and lots of lag. Which I'm kind of surprised at, really, because this car is not running too much over stock power. Stock power being 145 in this particular model. It's running 0.8 bar of boost, allegedly. That's what the little gauge is telling me anyway. This steering wheel feels massive in my hands. And I don't just mean the diameter of it, which, by the way, does feel far too large for a car of this size. I mean, the actual rim itself, it just feels chunky. Just really, really chunky. And it looks quite nice, although it is kind of plasticky. And again, it's another part of the car I feel someone's looked at it and gone, hey, let's have a nice chunky steering wheel rim. Why? What's wrong with a nice thin one? Okay, let's do a 30 mile an hour onwards pull. Oh, then it starts to pick up. It's an odd engine. It feels like this is a lot of hard work for the car, really. I'm not very confident in that back end. I'm really not. And the last time I drove a Mini was actually the Mini van that you'll have seen on the channel. And you get into that and you instantly drive it like a hooligan. Now, okay, that was not my own vehicle, and this is not my own either. And of course, any vehicle I drive on the channel, I'm not going to drive at 10/10 because it's not mine. And I can't afford to replace this if I break it. But I just feel like I'm keeping one eye open with this on that back end. Maybe it's just a lack of experience with the car. You know, this is first real-time driving. Well, actually, I've not driven a standard 500 before, so this is the first time driving a car like this of any kind. Oh, after changing from first to second, it took a minute for it to get a move on. Now, I do know that the tuning box in this car isn't set up quite perfectly yet, so that may just be a result of that. So I'm not going to say it's necessarily a fault of this car. Let's take a look at the other stuff in the car. So we've got a pretty tiny touchscreen in here. The sound system is at least half decent. That's a bonus, I suppose, and to a lot of people that may be a lot more important actually than how it handles. Speaking of handles, these are a bit, well, overstyled. This is cheap and nasty. oh, this boost gauge gets up to speed pretty quickly, but it feels like the power still takes some time after that to come on. I just, whoa, understeer. I don't get this steering at all. It resists me off dead center. It doesn't want to turn, and then suddenly it drops in. It's almost like the car's kind of constantly stuck in a rut. I don't get this. I actually tried to look up some reviews of these recently. Now, I normally do not look up any reviews of a car I'm about to drive, because I don't want to be tainted by somebody else's opinions of the car, you know, because I very well may disagree with them. You know, we're all entitled to our opinions, even those of us who are wrong. But I struggle to find any. I seem to alternate between people that either were, you know, dyed-in-the-wool real fans of the brand, you know, who loved everything Abarth, and that's fine. Incidentally, the best of those guys is Steph ABTV. Hi, Steph, if you're watching. However, most of the videos I found that were claiming to be reviews of the 595 were actually dealers trying to sell them. And that's definitely not going to be an unbiased review, is it? The suspension in this is reasonably firm. Now, I'm not going to bash it too much for that, because I'd say it's maybe better damped than the John Cooper Works equipped minivan that I drove. That was really punishingly stiff. Probably didn't help that it had sort of lightweight Cobra seats in it as well. I'm not particularly fan of these cloth seats myself. The pedals, a lot of people like to talk about the pedals because you do feel like you sort of step on them rather than, you know, pushing them forward in the usual fashion. Now, that actually doesn't bother me too much because I spent quite some time with an air-cooled 911 and that's got weird pedals too. So weird pedals in a car, that's fine. I'll give this a pass on that. It's this power delivery and handling that I really don't get. You know, I can forgive a lot in a car. I can forgive low-rent interiors. I can forgive stuff not being right. You know, if the car delivers on one thing, you know, for example, the Mini, I'm not fond of the styling. I'm not fond of the fact that it constantly tells you how exciting and go-karty is to drive, because actually it is exciting and go-karty to drive. This isn't filling me with joy, I must say. The red line is apparently 7, but this is not interested at all in going past about 6. Just doesn't fancy it. I later realised why I mistook the red line for being at 7,000 RPM. That's because when you're in sport mode, the gauges show that as the red line. However, turn the car back into normal mode and it instead gives you 6,000 RPM as the car's red line, which is closer to what it actually is. Who the hell thought that was a good idea? Now, I'll be honest, there are a lot of people, and you know what, I'll include myself in them, that often describe these as being very much a girly car. It's a car for women or hairdressers. Well, actually, most of the people I know that own these are men. Not just men, but they're blokes that really love their cars. And that's the thing that I find really confusing. And for a start, there's an awful lot of cars you can get for the same money. If this car was about a foot lower, I think it might be a lot more fun. Ultimately, this is a city car that Abarth have tried to do the best that they can with. I just feel like they're limited by the platform they're starting with. And they just haven't done enough for me to convince me. I think in terms of hot hatches and things I'd want, there's an awful lot of things I'd want instead. It does sound good for a tiny little turbo 4-cylinder. I actually quite like the Record Monza exhaust that's on the Competizione. Oh, Aaron's not going to be happy when he sees this video. Nor Steph. What can I say about it that's nice? Look, it looks great and it sounds great from the outside. From the inside though, I'm sorry, if I was spending this kind of money, I'd be spending it elsewhere. I really, really would. On the practical side, it's not great news either. Room in the back is there, you can get adults in there, but I'd advise it for short trips only. The boot's bigger than I expected that it would be, so that's not too bad. For the odd small shopping trip, it's perfectly adequate. However, according to the trip computer, this car's been averaging 31 to the gallon. That's not brilliant for a car of this size and power. I'm sure they've been very, very fun miles, but that's still not great economy. Between this and a Mini every day. I still don't love that car, but I think it's a much better one. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Please like, comment, subscribe. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there queuing up to tell me how wrong I am. Please do so. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.